The night sky above the Norwegian forests blazed with an unusual light. Dr. James Miller looked up from his microscope and walked to the window of his research station. At first, he thought it was just another aurora, but this light moved differently. It cut through the sky like a knife, leaving a trail of blue fire in its wake. "Did you see that?" He called out to the empty lab, forgetting for a moment that he was working late again. The other scientists had gone to bed hours ago, leaving him alone with his samples. The research station, hidden among the tall pine trees, was home to only 5 people, 2 biologists, a linguist, a medical doctor, and their station manager. The light grew bigger and brighter. James grabbed his coat and rushed outside into the cold night air. The object, whatever it was, seemed to be heading straight for the forest near their station. His heart beat faster as he realized this wasn't a meteor or any natural phenomenon he had ever seen. The impact came with less noise than he expected. Instead of a crash, there was a soft thump, followed by the sound of breaking branches. James didn't stop to think. He grabbed his emergency kit and a flashlight from next to the door and started running toward where he thought the object had landed. The forest was dark and cold, but his flashlight showed him the way. After 10 minutes of careful walking, he found it, a metallic pod about the size of a small car, partially buried in the soft earth. It didn't look like anything made on Earth. The surface was smooth and had a strange, shifting color that reminded him of oil on water. "Hello," he called out, knowing it was silly to expect an answer. "Is anyone there?" The pod made a soft humming sound, and part of its surface became transparent. James's breath caught in his throat. Inside, floating in some kind of clear liquid, was a person, or at least something that looked almost like a person. The being was small, with pale blue skin and delicate features that seemed almost human, but not quite. James pulled out his phone with shaking hands and called the station's emergency number. "Tom, wake up. You need to get everyone out here right now. And bring the portable medical equipment. All of it." While waiting for the others, he studied the pod more closely. The being inside looked young, maybe even a child by their species standards. Her eyes were closed, and she floated peacefully in the liquid, but James could see some injuries, burns and cuts that looked recent. Within 20 minutes, he heard voices calling his name. Tom, the station manager, arrived first, followed by Dr. Anna Thompson, their linguist, and Drs. Mark and Lisa, their medical team. "My God," Tom whispered when he saw the pod. "Is it? Are they alive?" Lisa stepped forward with her medical scanner. "The pod seems to be some kind of life support system. I'm getting vital signs, but they're weak. We need to get her inside." "Her?" James asked. "Based on these readings, yes, I think so. But we can't be certain with an alien species." They spent the next hour carefully moving the pod to their medical bay. It was lighter than it looked, made of some material none of them had ever seen before. The whole time, James couldn't take his eyes off the young alien's face. There was something about her expression, even in unconsciousness, that spoke of deep sadness. In the medical bay's bright lights, they could see her more clearly. She was small, maybe 5 feet tall, with long, silvery hair that floated in the pod's liquid. Her fingers were longer than human ones, with an extra joint, and her ears came to slight points. "We should call the authorities," Tom said, but he didn't sound convinced. "This is way above our clearance level." "She's injured," Lisa said firmly. "As a doctor, I took an oath to help anyone in need. I don't remember it saying humans only." James nodded. "If we call this in now, she'll become a research subject. Look at her. She's just a kid. She needs medical help first." The team worked through the night, trying to understand the pod's systems. Anna studied the strange symbols on its surface, taking pictures and making notes. By morning, they had figured out how to check its status through a kind of control panel that appeared when touched in the right way. "It's keeping her in suspended animation," Lisa explained, looking at readings none of them fully understood. but the system is failing. We have maybe 48 hours before it gives out completely. Can we keep her in it? Tom asked. No. The power source is almost dead. We need to figure out how to safely get her out and treat her injuries. James stayed by the pod while the others took short breaks to rest and eat. He couldn't explain why, but he felt responsible for her. Maybe it was the way she had literally fallen from the sky into his life, or maybe it was just the obvious fact that she was running from something. The burns on her skin and the damage to the pod told a story none of them wanted to think about too hard. Around noon the next day, the pod started making a different sound. The liquid inside began to drain away, and the young alien's eyes fluttered. Everyone gathered around, both excited and nervous. None of them had planned for first contact to happen at their small research station in the middle of nowhere. Her eyes opened slowly, revealing irises that looked like swirling galaxies. She blinked a few times, then focused on the humans around her. For a moment, everything was still. Then her eyes went wide with fear, and she tried to push herself away from them, only to find herself trapped by the pod's walls. "It's okay," Anna said softly, holding up her empty hands. "We're not going to hurt you." The alien girl spoke, her voice musical but filled with panic. The words were unlike anything they had ever heard before. She pressed her hands against the pod's surface, looking for a way out. "We need to open it," Lisa said. "Her vital signs are spiking. She's going to hurt herself." James stepped closer to the pod, moving slowly. He pointed to himself and said clearly, "Friend, we're friends." He knew she couldn't understand the words, but he hoped she would understand the tone. The alien girl stopped moving. She looked at James for a long moment, then at each of the other humans in turn. Whatever she saw in their faces seemed to calm her slightly. She said something else in her language, softer this time, and placed her hand against the pod's surface, matching it to where James's hand rested on the other side. The pod made a clicking sound, and its surface became completely transparent. The remaining liquid drained away through hidden channels, leaving the alien girl sitting in the empty container. She was wearing what looked like a flight suit made of a thin, shimmering material. Lisa stepped forward with a medical scanner, but Tom caught her arm. "Give her a minute," he said quietly. "Let's not overwhelm her." The alien girl looked down at her hands, then at the humans again. Slowly, carefully, she stood up. She was shaking slightly, whether from fear or weakness they couldn't tell. She took a small step forward, then stumbled. James caught her before she could fall. She felt incredibly light in his arms, like she was made of hollow bones like a bird. For a moment, she stiffened at his touch, but then she relaxed, seemingly too exhausted to stay afraid. "Let's get her to a bed," Lisa said, already moving to help. As they helped her to the medical bay's nearest bed, James couldn't help but notice how young she looked up close. Despite her alien features, there was something undeniably teenage about her. He wondered what had happened to make someone so young flee into space alone. The girl let them help her onto the bed, her strange eyes never leaving their faces. She said something else in her language, touching her chest. They realized she was trying to introduce herself. "Lyra," she said, the word clear despite her accent. "Lyra," James repeated, then pointed to himself. "James." She nodded slightly, then her eyes started to close. Whatever strength had kept her going seemed to run out, and she fell into what Lisa assured them was just normal sleep. They all stood there for a moment, watching her chest rise and fall with slow breaths. "Well," Tom said finally, "I guess we just made first contact." "No," James corrected him, still watching the sleeping alien girl. "I think first contact made us." Lyra slept for 2 full days. During that time, the research station team took turns watching over her, making sure she was comfortable and safe. Lisa monitored her vital signs constantly, learning more about her alien biology with each passing hour. On the morning of the 3rd day, James was dozing in a chair next to her bed when he heard a soft sound. He opened his eyes to find Lyra sitting up, looking around the room with much more awareness than before. When she saw him, she didn't show fear this time. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, studying him with those galaxy-like eyes. "Good morning," James said softly, trying to sound friendly. He pressed the button to call the others, knowing Anna would want to be here to try communicating. Lyra touched her throat, then spoke in her musical language. She frowned when James shook his head to show he didn't understand. She tried again, using different sounds, as if testing which language might work. Anna arrived quickly, carrying the tablet she'd been using to record and analyze Lyra's earlier words. "Let's try something simple first," she said. She pointed to herself and said clearly, "Anna." Then she pointed to James and said his name, before pointing to Lyra and saying hers. Lyra watched this with interest. She repeated their names perfectly, then added something else, probably words in her language. She pointed to various objects in the room, clearly asking for their names. "She wants to learn," Anna said, smiling. "This is good. She's not afraid anymore, just curious." They spent the next hour teaching her simple words. Lyra learned incredibly quickly, seeming to remember every word after hearing it just once. When Lisa came to check on her, Lyra was already able to say things like water, bed, and thank you. But the real breakthrough came when Tom brought in Lyra's pod to study it. As soon as she saw it, Lyra became very excited. She got out of bed, still a bit unsteady on her feet, and hurried to the pod. Her long fingers moved across its surface in a specific pattern, and a hidden compartment opened. From inside, she pulled out a small device that looked a bit like a silver headband. She pointed to herself, then to James, then to the device, clearly trying to explain something. "I think she wants to show us something," Anna said, "but we should be careful. We don't know what that device does." Lyra seemed to understand their hesitation. She placed the device on her own head first. Small lights flickered across its surface, and she smiled. Then she took it off and held it out to James, her eyes pleading. James looked at the others. Tom shook his head, but Lisa nodded. "Her vital signs are stable," Lisa said, "and she trusted us when she was hurt. Maybe we should trust her now." Taking a deep breath, James took the device and carefully put it on his head. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded into colors and feelings that weren't his own. He saw flashes of a beautiful city with tall, crystal towers reaching into a purple sky. He felt the love of a family, the joy of learning, and then terror. Fire in the sky. People running. A last desperate hug from someone who felt like a mother, then being pushed into the escape pod. When the vision ended, James found himself sitting on the floor, tears running down his face. Lyra knelt next to him, her own eyes wet with tears. She touched his hand gently. "Memory share," she said in careful English. "Now you understand." The others watched in amazement as James explained what he had seen. "Her civilization," he said, his voice shaking. "It was so beautiful. But something attacked them. Some kind of invasion. Her mother put her in that pod to save her." Over the next few hours, they took turns using the memory-sharing device. Each time, they learned more about Lyra and her people, the Astrani. They were a peaceful civilization that had achieved amazing things through their understanding of science and art. But another species, which Lyra's people called the Void Hunters, had attacked without warning. "Why?" Anna asked, after her turn with the device. She spoke slowly so Lyra could understand. Why did they attack? Lyra had learned enough English by now to give a simple answer. They hate different life. Want only their kind in space. The humans exchanged troubled looks. It was an old story, one they knew too well from their own history. The strong attacking the different, the peaceful falling to the violent. That evening, as they sat together sharing a meal, Lyra watched them with growing confusion. Finally, she asked, "Why help me? Your world, not space travel yet, could give me to leaders. Get reward." James translated her meaning for the others, and they all fell silent for a moment. It was Tom who answered first. "Because it's right," he said simply. "You needed help. Nothing else matters." Lyra used the memory device one more time to share her response, letting them feel her gratitude and growing trust. In her memories, they saw that her people had considered humanity too primitive to contact. But now she understood something her civilization had missed, that technological advancement and moral advancement didn't always go hand in hand. As night fell, Lisa helped Lyra back to her bed for rest. The alien girl was learning fast, but her body was still healing. Before sleeping, she grabbed James's hand. "My people," she said in her improving English. "More might live, more pods escaped, but hunters follow. Must hide. We'll help you find them," James promised, "and we'll help you hide." Lyra fell asleep with a slight smile on her face, still holding James's hand. The humans gathered in the next room to talk. "We can't keep her hidden forever," Tom said. "Sooner or later, someone's going to notice." "Then we need to make sure the right people notice first," Anna replied. "People who will help protect her, not study her." "She's just a kid," Lisa added. "She lost everything. We can't abandon her now." James looked back through the doorway at their sleeping guest. "Maybe this is why we're here," he said quietly. "Not just our research station, but humanity. Maybe this is our chance to prove we're better than our technology suggests." The others nodded. They had all felt it through the memory device, the loneliness, the fear, but also the hope. Lyra had crashed on their doorstep by chance, but their choice to help her hadn't been chance at all. It was who they were, who humanity could be at its best. Outside the research station, the northern lights danced across the sky. Somewhere up there, they all knew, other pods might be drifting, carrying more survivors. And somewhere, the Void Hunters were searching. But for now, in this small building in the Norwegian forest, a small piece of hope slept peacefully, guarded by humans who had chosen kindness over fear. None of them knew what challenges the next day would bring, but they knew they would face them together, proving with each small act of compassion that humanity's heart was bigger than anyone, including humanity itself, had imagined. The peace at the research station lasted exactly 1 week. Early on a Monday morning, they heard the sound of helicopters approaching. Tom was the first to spot them. 2 military helicopters heading straight for their location. "They found us," he said, rushing into the medical bay where Lyra was helping Lisa organize supplies. "Someone must have spotted the pod coming down." Lyra's face went pale, her blue skin turning almost white. "Bad people?" she asked in her now fluent but simple English. "We don't know," James answered, already moving to help her up. "But we're not taking any chances. Anna, get the memory device. Lisa, grab whatever medical supplies she still needs." They had planned for this. The research station had an old emergency bunker, left over from colder wars. They had spent the last week cleaning it and storing supplies there, just in case. Now it didn't seem like such an overreaction. Lyra grabbed James's arm before they could leave the room. "The pod," she said urgently, "cannot let them find it. Has. Map. Other survivors." Tom nodded and ran to get the pod's control crystal, which Lyra had shown them how to remove. Without it, the pod was just an empty shell, its secret safe. They made it to the bunker just as the helicopters landed. Through the small periscope, they watched as men in military uniforms approached the station. Their weapons weren't drawn, but their manner was all business. "Dr. Thompson," a voice called through the station's intercom. "This is Colonel Richard Walker. We need to speak with you and your team." Tom looked at the others. "I should go up. They'll be suspicious if no one's here." "I'll go too," Anna said. "We're supposed to be doing linguistics research. One person alone would look strange." James, Lisa, and Lyra stayed in the bunker, watching through the periscope as Tom and Anna went to meet the soldiers. They could hear everything through the station's internal communication system, which they had carefully modified over the past week. "We detected an unusual atmospheric entry in this area 8 days ago. the colonel was saying, followed by some very interesting energy signatures. Would you know anything about that? We did see something, Tom answered carefully. Thought it was a meteor. We looked, but couldn't find anything in the dark. The colonel smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Dr. Thompson, we have satellite images of an object landing near here. We also have energy readings unlike anything we've seen before. Please don't insult our intelligence. In the bunker, Lyra suddenly stiffened. Her eyes went wide with fear. They come, she whispered. Who? James asked. The soldiers. No. Lyra touched her head, then pointed up at the sky. Hunters. Can feel them. Getting closer. Lisa checked the medical scanner she'd brought. Her neural activity is spiking. Whatever she's sensing, it's real. Above them, the conversation continued. The colonel was becoming more insistent, and Tom's denials were wearing thin. Then every light in the station went out at once. A new sound filled the air, a deep, thrumming noise that made their teeth vibrate. Through the periscope, they saw strange lights in the sky, moving in patterns that no human aircraft could match. Multiple contacts. One of the soldiers shouted, coming in fast from high altitude. The colonel's attitude changed instantly. Get your people to safety, he ordered Tom. Where are the others? Bunker, Tom said, dropping the act in the face of a greater threat. This way. They heard running footsteps. Then the bunker door opened. Tom, Anna, and several soldiers piled in, the colonel among them. He took one look at Lyra and nodded, as if confirming something he'd already guessed. You're the one they're hunting, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Lyra answered. I am sorry. Brought danger to your world. The colonel shook his head. You're not the one bringing danger. We've been tracking these ships for days, trying to figure out their pattern. Now we know. They were searching for you. The bunker shook as something explosive happened above. Through the periscope, they could see 3 sleek, black ships hovering over the research station. They were firing some kind of energy weapons, methodically destroying the building. Your weapons, Lyra said urgently to the colonel, will not work against their shields. But she pulled out the control crystal from her pod. This has codes. Can disrupt their systems. Need what you call computer. Got something better, one of the younger soldiers said, pulling out a tactical laptop. Military grade, hardened against EMPs and quantum interference. Lyra's fingers moved faster than human eyes could follow, connecting the crystal to the laptop through some kind of interface they'd never seen before. The soldier whistled softly as new code filled his screen. This is way beyond anything we have, he said. But I think I see the pattern. It's like a viral code, designed to infiltrate their shield systems. Can you use it? The colonel asked. The soldier nodded. With her help, yes. But we need to get closer, and we need something powerful enough to transmit it. The station's radio tower, Tom said. If we boost the signal. The colonel made a quick decision. Johnson, Martinez, get that code ready to transmit. Peters, Williams, you're on defense. Buy us time if they try to land. The rest of you with me. We're going to give these hunters a proper Earth welcome. James grabbed Lyra's arm as she tried to follow the soldiers. Where are you going? Must help, she said firmly. Know their ships. No weak points. Cannot hide while others fight. The colonel looked at her with respect. Stay between us. We'll keep you safe. What followed was chaos. They ran through the snow to the partially destroyed station, ducking energy blasts from above. The Void Hunters' ships moved like angry wasps, their weapons cutting through buildings like paper. But they weren't firing at full power, James realized. They wanted to capture, not kill. Lyra worked with the soldier at the radio tower, her fingers dancing over the laptop as they prepared the virus. The other soldiers provided covering fire, not doing any damage but keeping the ships from getting a clear shot. Ready, Lyra said finally, but signal not strong enough. What do you need? The colonel asked. Power. Much power. James looked at the station's backup generator, then at the pod's crystal. Would linking them work? Like a battery? Lyra's eyes lit up. Yes, but dangerous. Crystal might break. Do it, the colonel ordered. Better a broken crystal than a broken planet. They made the connections. The crystal glowed brighter and brighter as it channeled power from the generator. Lyra typed one final command, and suddenly the air itself seemed to ripple. The Void Hunters' ships stuttered in the air. Their shields flickered and died. 2 of them retreated immediately, vanishing into the clouds. The third wasn't fast enough. Its systems crashed completely, and it fell into the forest with a tremendous crash. Did we win? Lisa asked into the sudden silence. Lyra shook her head. Not win, but showed them. Earth is not easy target. They will return with better shields, but now have time. Time to prepare. The colonel looked at the smoking ruins of the research station, then at the diverse group around him. Soldiers, scientists, and one brave alien girl, all working together to defend their world. Then we better make good use of that time, he said, because next time, Earth will be ready for them. The next few weeks changed everything. After the battle at the research station, Colonel Walker didn't just file a report. He showed his superiors the memory device recordings of what happened to Lyra's people. Within days, the highest levels of governments around the world knew about the Void Hunters and the threat they posed. The research station team, along with Lyra, was moved to a secure facility deep in the mountains. It wasn't as cozy as their old station, but it was safer. The facility had thick walls, advanced sensors, and enough technology to make Lyra feel a bit more at home. Your people learned fast, Lyra told James one morning as they watched scientists studying her pod's remains. In the weeks since the attack, her English had improved greatly. Took my people many years to develop shield technology. Your scientists did it in days. We're good at copying homework, James joked, but he knew what she meant. The human scientists had taken the basic principles from the Void Hunters' shields and were already finding ways to improve them. It wasn't just copying, it was innovation born from desperation. Lisa had made breakthroughs too. Working with Lyra's blood samples, she had found ways to treat the radiation damage that still plagued the alien girl. Human medicine is different, she explained to a group of doctors. We had to solve problems that more advanced races never faced. Sometimes the simple solutions are the best ones. But the biggest surprise came from Anna. Using the memory device and her linguistic skills, she had found patterns in the Void Hunters' communications during the attack. They're not as united as they seem, she told Colonel Walker. Some of their ships hesitated before retreating. I think some of them don't agree with hunting other species. The colonel took this information seriously. If there's division in their ranks, we might be able to use that. They got their chance sooner than expected. 3 days later, their sensors picked up an unusual signal. It was weak and hidden in background noise, but it was definitely not human or Void Hunter in origin. It's a Strani, Lyra said excitedly, her galaxy eyes shining. A distress signal. There are more survivors. The signal was coming from a point near Jupiter. The survivors must have hidden their pod in the giant planet's radiation belt, using the natural interference to avoid detection. But their power was running low, and they needed help. We have to save them, Lyra pleaded. But journey is dangerous. Void Hunters will watch Earth's space now. To everyone's surprise, it was Tom who found the solution. We don't send a big ship, he said. We send many small ones, hundreds of tiny vessels, most of them empty. The hunters won't know which ones to chase. The plan grew quickly. Countries that had been rivals for decades now worked together, sharing technology and resources. China provided the launch facilities. Russia offered its best stealth technology. America brought its advanced computers, and smaller nations contributed everything from fuel to scientific innovations. In the facility's main control room, Lyra watched in amazement as humans around the world coordinated their efforts. Screens showed launches from every continent, small fast ships rising into the sky like a swarm of metal birds. "Ready for your part?" James asked her. After much debate, it had been decided that Lyra would go on the rescue mission. She knew her people's technology best, and the survivors would trust her. "Ready," she said firmly, but worried. Not about hunters. About. She struggled to find the words. "About letting us risk ourselves for your people," James guessed. She nodded. "My people thought humans were primitive. Too violent, too divided. But look at this." She gestured at the screens showing global cooperation. "You unite to help strangers. Risk everything for people not even from your world." "That's what humans do," Lisa said, coming to join them. "We argue, we fight, but when real trouble comes, we stand together." Colonel Walker's voice came over the speakers. "All ships report ready. Rescue fleet will launch in 10 minutes. They had chosen the smallest, fastest ship for Lyra's actual rescue mission. James would pilot it, with Lisa along to provide medical care for any survivors they found. The rest of the fleet would run interference, creating such a confusing pattern of movements that the Void Hunters wouldn't know which ship to target. "Remember," the colonel briefed them one last time, "we're not trying to fight them. We just need to keep them busy long enough to get our people there and back." "Our people," Lyra repeated softly, touching James's arm. "You say our people, not your people and my people." "Because that's what we are now," James said. "Earth is protecting its own." The launch was smooth. From their small ship's windows, they could see hundreds of other vessels, all following different paths, but all part of the same mission. Earth's first real space fleet, born not for war or profit, but to save lives. The Void Hunters appeared just as they passed the moon. Their black ships were larger, more powerful, but they seemed confused by the human strategy. They would chase one ship, only to find it empty, while others scattered in new directions. "They're not used to this," Lyra said, watching the tactical display. "Their technology is better, but their thinking is simple. They expect direct fight. Instead, they gotta dance." The human ships moved in patterns tested in thousands of video games and simulations. Young pilots, who had spent their lives mastering digital controls, now used those skills to weave an impossible web of movement through space. When they reached Jupiter, they found the hidden pod exactly where the signal had shown. Inside were 3 Astrani, an older scientist and 2 children. They were weak but alive, and their joy at seeing Lyra was beautiful to watch. "Earth welcomes you," James told them as Lisa checked their health. Lyra translated, and the refugees cried with relief. The journey back was tenser. The Void Hunters had figured out which ship had Lyra, but now they faced a new problem. Every human vessel in the fleet moved to protect the rescue ship, not with advanced shields or weapons, but with pure, unpredictable determination. "Impossible," one of the rescued Astrani said in their language, watching the human ships dance through space. "How can they fly like this without unified control?" "They're not unified," Lyra explained proudly. "They're all choosing to help. Each ship, each pilot, making their own choice to protect us. That's what makes it work." As they approached Earth, the Void Hunters finally retreated. Their sophisticated tactical computers simply couldn't predict what the humans would do next. It was like trying to calculate the movement of a flock of birds, each one following its own path while somehow still working as part of the whole. When they landed, they found the facility celebrating. The screens showed scenes of joy from around the world as people learned the mission had succeeded. Humanity had just fought its first space battle, not with weapons, but with cooperation and clever thinking. "This changes everything," Colonel Walker said, watching the new Astrani refugees being helped from the ship. "We're not helpless anymore, and we've shown everyone out there, including ourselves, what humanity can do when we work together." Lyra looked at the happy faces around her, human and Astrani together. "My people will need time to heal," she said. "But now we have a safe place to do that. Have new family too." Yes, James agreed, watching as Lisa began treating the refugees, while Anna started teaching them basic English words. That's another thing humans are good at, making family out of strangers. 6 months had passed since the rescue mission. Earth had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The mountain facility had grown into a small city, with both humans and Astrani walking its streets. More survivors had found their way to Earth after hearing about the successful rescue, each bringing new knowledge and hope with them. James stood at a window in the new control center, watching Lyra teach a group of human children about the stars. She wasn't the scared refugee anymore. She had grown confident, becoming a bridge between two civilizations. Her galaxy eyes sparkled as she used the memory device to show the children what her home world had looked like. "She's good with them," Anna said, joining him at the window. "The children don't see her as alien anymore. To them, she's just Lyra, their favorite teacher." "The Void Hunters never understood this about us," James replied. "How quickly humans can adapt, how easily we accept new things when given the chance." Their conversation was interrupted by urgent beeping from the main console. Tom, who had been monitoring deep space signals, called them over. "You need to see this," he said, his face serious. The screen showed a massive energy signature moving through the solar system. It was larger than anything they had seen before, and it was heading straight for Earth. "Void Hunter flagship," Lyra said from the doorway. She had finished her lesson and come to investigate the alarm. "They are tired of waiting. Coming to end this." Colonel Walker, who now commanded the entire Earth Defense Force, called an emergency meeting. Representatives from every major nation attended, either in person or through secure channels. "We knew this day would come," the colonel said. "They won't let us hide forever. The question is, are we ready?" The last 6 months hadn't been wasted. Human scientists, working with Astrani knowledge, had developed new technologies. Every major city now had shield generators. The small fleet that had rescued the survivors had grown into a real space force, with ships that combined human creativity with Astrani engineering. "We have something new to show you," Lisa said, standing up. "We've been working on it with the Astrani scientists. We call it the Unity Field." She explained how they had modified the memory device's technology. Instead of sharing memories between two people, it could now connect the minds of entire crews. Human pilots could fly their ships as one, while still keeping the unpredictable creativity that had confused the Void Hunters before. "But there's a risk," she warned. "The neural load is intense. The pilots would have to trust each other completely." "We'll do it," said a young pilot in the front row. Others nodded. They had trained for months, becoming more than just squadrons. They were families now. "The Astrani will fly too," Lyra added. "Our minds, our skills, joined with human courage." They had 3 days before the Void Hunter flagship arrived. Those days were a blur of preparation. The Unity Field was installed in 30 ships, each carrying mixed crews of humans and Astrani. Other ships would fly normally, providing support and confusion just like in the rescue mission. On the morning of the battle, James found Lyra in the garden dome they had built to remind the Astrani of home. She was touching a flower that the scientists had created, a mix of earth roses and a similar plant from her world. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "No," she said firmly. "Thinking about changes. 6 months ago, I was alone, last of my people. Now look, humans and Astrani working together, making new things, new life." She touched the flower again. "Like this. Not Earth flower, not Astrani flower. Something new, something better." The alert sounded. The Void Hunter flagship had entered Earth's orbit, accompanied by hundreds of smaller ships. Their message was simple: surrender the Astrani refugees, or face destruction. Earth's answer came in the form of 1,000 ships rising from hidden bases around the planet. Leading them were the 30 Unity Field ships, their crews linked mind to mind, human and Astrani together. "They are confused," Lyra said from her position in the control center. She was too valuable to risk in battle, But the unity field let her feel what the pilots felt. They expected us to hide, to beg, not to fight. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. The Void Hunters had better technology, but they faced something they had never seen before. Human determination combined with Astrani wisdom, multiplied by the unity field's power. The linked crews flew in impossible patterns, their ships moving together like schools of fish or flocks of birds. When the Void Hunters adapted to one strategy, the humans would create a new one, their shared minds sparking with endless creativity. "Look at their formation," Colonel Walker said, watching the tactical display. "Some of their ships are holding back. The ones we thought might disagree with the hunting." He was right. As the battle continued, more and more Void Hunter ships pulled away from the fight. Some simply watched, while others, "They're protecting our ships," Anna realized, watching the patterns. The ones who disagreed all along, they're finally taking a stand. The flagship noticed too. It turned its main weapons on the deserters, firing without mercy. That was its mistake. The Unity Field crews saw their chance and took it, flying through the gaps in the flagship's shields created by its own attack. Their weapons weren't very powerful, but they didn't need to be. The Unity Field let them target the exact same points at the exact same time, focusing their fire with perfect coordination. The flagship's shields failed, then its engines. The remaining loyal Void Hunter ships retreated, leaving their flagship dead in space. The deserters stayed, their ships now flying in formation with Earth's fleet. When they boarded the flagship, they found its crew ready to surrender. "We had forgotten," their commander said through a translator, "that strength comes in many forms, that life finds new ways to grow, to combine, to become stronger together." In the days that followed, Earth changed again. The Void Hunter deserters asked for asylum, adding their knowledge to Earth's growing collection of cultures. The Astrani began to build permanent homes, no longer refugees but citizens of a new world. "We should thank them, in a way," James said to Lyra as they watched a mixed group of human, Astrani, and former Void Hunter children playing in the garden dome. The hunters wanted to keep species apart, to keep their power. Instead, they brought us all together. Lyra smiled, her galaxy eyes reflecting the light of her new home's sun. "This is how life should be," she said. "Not fighting difference, but learning from it, growing from it." She touched the hybrid flower again. "Making new things, better things, together." Above them, ships from 3 different species flew peaceful patrols. On the ground, scientists from all 3 races worked together, combining their knowledge in new ways. And in classrooms and homes around the world, children of Earth learned about their place in a much larger universe, not as conquerors or victims, but as friends to those who needed help and protectors of all who sought peace. "What do you think they'll call this time in their history books?" James asked. "In my language," Lyra said, "we would call it the Great Joining. Time when walls came down, when fear turned to friendship." "I like that," James said. "But you know what humans will probably call it." "What?" He grinned. "Tuesday. Because for us, helping people, making friends, turning enemies into allies, that's just what we do. Not sometimes, not when it's easy, but every day. That's what makes us human." Lyra laughed, the sound like music in the garden's peaceful air. Above them, the hybrid flowers bloomed under Earth's sun, their petals catching the light like distant stars. Stars that were no longer foreign or frightening, but full of friends waiting to be found.